Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents. With me, your host, Valerie, and sometime kitty co-hosts, Miss Purrington and Mookie are safely at home. We are recording live at the Fallout Theater podcast studio. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. In addition to podcasts, Comedy Wham brings you articles, album reviews, our advice column, and our festivals page featuring upcoming festivals across the country and the world, and our FPIA contest page. We're best known for our events page for live comedy shows in Austin, Houston, and DFW, where 100% of the entries you see come from comics and producers. If you want your show featured on the calendar, click the Submit a Show button from the top of the home page or events page to complete the short survey. It's free and easy. Tag us on your Instagram stories and we'll share your show promo to our Instagram followers. Want to support these resources we provide? You can donate to Comedy Wham on PayPal, Venmo, or even Patreon. Click the Support CW icon on our homepage to see the ways that you can help us. Now back to our podcast. Launched in 2016, the podcast project brings you funny people and their stories. As a fan, I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and we usually take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. And if you like this podcast, please rate and review us. Today, I have rattled off, or I have listed off on my piece of paper, the 5 different times that our guest has appeared on Comedy Wham Presents, including the first ever Comedy Wham Presents podcast episode number 1 back in January of 2016. Remember that? Do you remember that?
Sure.
I consider him a friend, and we may even nerd out about Poirot, just like we did that very first episode. And he is a thing. Is the co-host of Sure Thing, which wrapped up after 512 shows, or he was the co-host, but you were always the co-host. Well, anyway, this is the kind of nerdery that we're going to get into. And not giving himself any break at all after the conclusion of Sure Thing, launched Fallout tonight, which I have been describing to everybody as the best late night show that you could go check out in Austin. I am absolutely smitten with the show. And now Comedy Wham presents our 6-time returning guest, Duncan Carson.
That's got to be the record, though, right?
I think it is.
Because Brent and I did it once solo each, which would mean we were tied until this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And just as a recurring, because, Brennan moved to Portland, Brennan K.O. Gray. We co-hosted.
R.I.P. No.
We co-hosted Sure Thing for 11 years. And we will probably, when he comes back, do the Sure Thing Records presents.
Yeah.
So I'll always be, we like to describe it as Sure Thing is the two of us. So I'm always.
There you go. Thank you.
Always half of Sure Thing, whatever form it may currently take.
That's true, because Sure Thing Records continues to exist. Mm-hmm. And over the last 6 months has released 2
That
albums?
Sounds right. Yeah, probably. I don't know.
Avery Moore's.
Moore's.
Oh my gosh. Oh boy.
Something else.
I mean, you should know, but more than I should.
Much more embarrassing than I can't think of it. To be honest, Did we do anything else this year? I'm sure we did.
Or maybe you.
We put on
you recorded Max.
We recorded Mac's second full-length album in May or something, February. And that is also in the works.
Yeah.
But and some. Nice. Well, we'll get into the future at the end or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, here we are.
Here you are.
7 years later.
With a break. Yeah, I know. I mean, 7 years later, but I've known you for maybe not quite that 11 years that you ran Sure Thing, but definitely 10. Because I remember 2012, as we have joked before, Sure Thing was my therapy.
Yep.
And so I've been coming to the Sure Thing shows. So I've known you for
11 years also. Yeah. That's crazy.
Wild times.
I have no sense of time anymore. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It gets slower and slower. I don't know.
Really?
This is this comes up a lot because the old thing is and I guess I understand that too. Is you get older, and I'm nearly 40. I'll be 40 in March, and you have more days to compare everything to. So fractionally, life seems to speed up is the idea. But personally, I did this weird backwards thing where I spent my whole 20s drunk, and then spent my whole
As you do.
yeah, spent my whole 30s like taking a little better care of myself, and like also that's one sure thing like happened and really slowed the week down for me.
Yeah.
And in the last 3 months, I've been doing this late night thing that is so much more brain intensive, and it is literally astounding to just myself and John Mendoza and Adam Shumate, who are like my head writer and like chief producer or whatever. We need to think of a good title for Adam. That's we'll get into this on our podcast later.
Yeah.
But John Mendoza is my head writer because it just feels fun to give somebody that title.
Yeah.
But we've done 13 shows now, and we're like, it's been 13 shows. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's really slowed the month to a crawl.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for me, everything is just racing by so fast.
Yeah.
And as the time signal for that is you and Brendan have watched my son grow up. Also, I have been watching him grow up.
That will help.
And, it's like, oh my God, he's a senior in high school. He's going to be graduating this year. Isn't that insane? Yeah. How did that happen? It's that damn thing, time.
So, yeah.
Anyway.
Your time's really about to slow down.
I don't know.
I mean, we'll see.
I mean, there's things that I have on my bucket list that I want to do, and
all right.
But yeah, this is not an interview of me, Duncan. This is turning into that, and we're going to burn material if we
just grab
do that.
Your show.
Yeah.
Let's go.
This is what happens with friends. You just follow the conversation. All right, fine. I'll be an interviewer. All right, so let's talk. We know so much about you as the Sure Thing co-host and the partner behind Sure Thing Records.
Sure.
Fallout Tonight. When can you pinpoint when you came up with this brainchild idea?
I suppose I could sort of pinpoint it. Oh, I mean, there's so many. There's elements in it of all the like sort of extracurricular things I've always done, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because that was especially 2012 and all that when Sure Thing was starting. I came into town underemployed and just full of energy. So I was doing stand-up all the time, but I also started my own sort of one-on-one interview podcast called Sincere Tweets, which ran for about a year, maybe a little more. So, I interview people now on the late night show. And at some point in there, I did like a daily YouTube joke thing called the Trending Topic News, where there's just a writing exercise to write 4 or 5 monologue jokes a day, which got very little traction or whatever. Then a couple of years ago, as we discussed on another episode of this, I found TikTok to be the perfect home for that.
Yeah.
So I did it daily again for like a year and a half and got some 40,000 followers. So I knew the monologue writing joke muscle was there.
Yeah.
But the evolution of this show, because Brendan K. O'Grady knew he was going to move to Portland, and he told me like more than a year before.
Yeah.
He ended up moving in December just now. So I had a lot of time to just be like, what do I want to do? Like, should I just keep it going? Should I get a different co-host? And what spurred everything was knowing, no matter what, that the name Sure Thing would be leaving. Or just, if I'm not hosting it with him, I have to call it something else.
Yeah, yeah.
So that, I was talking to John Mendoza, and I was thinking maybe just something where it's all improvised, because I love when somebody does that, like, improvised stand-up format. And,
yeah.
And then I had this idea, and a lot of it was born of doing those daily jokes about the current news of just like, maybe it's some sort of like apocalyptic, it's the last news broadcast of like some, fictional thing. Yeah. And it's like, there's disasters and the like subtext and there's video elements and all this sci-fi. And I could call it, a long time ago, Katie Stone, a very funny comic, and I we were dating at this time, and she at the Old New Movement had like a rotating sort of free variety night.
Okay.
So she ended up Naughty Bits. You probably remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Was one of the monthly slots with her and Ella Gale, and she did a couple others, and then the last one, last Sunday of the month or something, we tried a couple times a show called Signing Off. So I reached out to her, and I was like, I have this idea for like this news thing, and it's like a disaster, and it's Signing Off would be a perfect title because it's the end of the world, So And then I can end it with like a very sincere speech about this. Maybe it's my last moment on earth and all this. So I emailed her, and she's very busy out in LA, and she just replied, let me, reply properly to this when I have time to like dig into it. And then like a week and a half went by, 2 weeks or something, And I'm not in a hurry, but like, because I think she thought of that name originally. And I was like, if you need it for something, I don't want to, like, that's fine. I'll think of something else.
Yeah.
But so I didn't know if she was going to have like just dibs on that name or something. And then the more I waited for her to respond, I was like, God, that sounds exhausting to like commit to a whole like actual sort of sketch written conceit of like a disaster thing. And there's stand up in the middle. How does that make any sense? And then so before I even clarified with her, I think I was talking to John. I was just like, I'm just going to do like a late night. Like, why wouldn't I? I'm just going to put together all the things I've been doing for 12, 13 years and just call it Fallout Tonight, And some people were like, it's kind of a generic name. I'm like, yeah, but this
keeps it simple.
It's utilitarian, and it lets all of the personality of the show be mine, which is very egotistical. So I reached out to Katie, and I was like, hey, actually, you know what? I'm not actually thinking about that name anymore. So if you want to keep it. And she was like, oh, I'd missed that question in my initial. Oh, shit. To be fair, my initial email to her was like it was full of other, just like, hey, how have you been? And, this and that. And on the site, sure thing's ending and all this sort of. So it was buried at the end, and she didn't see me asking the only question I actually asked. So then I used that for the name of the podcast, which we do after the show.
Okay.
Signing off. It's the end of the thing. We're putting all these ideas to rest. On to next week,
So you made it work.
Yeah, so it was nearly post-apocalyptic, because the nice thing about knowing it for so long was also being relatively sure that Fallout would let me try whatever I want to try, assuming it was vaguely comedy related, Vaguely. I would assume it couldn't just be like a very serious one-man show about existentialism and death or something.
Very on brand for you.
I'll try that on a Saturday at 7 at some time, but not Friday 9:30. But yeah, it was probably like 5 months after Brennan planted the seed of you got to choose how to move on, and a couple months before I even pitched it to Fallout, but they said yes, and here we are.
Here we are. So you have John as your head writer.
Mm-hmm. John Mendoza, funniest person in Austin winner. Multi-time Moon Tower performer or whatever, and just a guy that, because we've been hanging out once a week for 5-6 years now, and just be he's a very abstract one-liner guy, and I'm a very talky conversational guy, so we've always just run bits by one another, to get a truly neutral, like I would have never think of his bits, and he would have never thought of mine. And then my buddy Adam Shumate is also a longtime stand-up, originally from Dallas. And he, both of them to degrees, like John sort of since the pandemic, and Adam since a couple of years before, kind of out of the stand-up game. But just people that I knew could help me find my voice. Yeah. Which turned out to be something relatively rare in stand-up, to really like collaborate with other people. Yeah. In an environment. And it was just in a vibe that feels like very free of anxiety and because there's so many very talented people that like maybe you feel this weird competition with them or like Mac Blake, he's kind of intimidating, he's so good or or whatever it is. Yeah. And but Adam and John have always found to be brilliant comedians that also like usually get what I'm going for. And that's turned out to be the most organic, like fun part of the show. Is just they both are in places of their life where they also have 2 nights a week to commit to something crazy, and I'm getting them back up on stage more and more, including tonight after this. So that'll be fun. And they're like my I've been deep diving on the start of like Conan's original show. They're like my Jeff Ross and Robert Smigel, Jeff Ross, the producer of Late Night with Conan O'Brien, not The other Jeff Ross.
Not the, okay.
Who sucks? We don't have to get into it. Oh, throwing haymakers.
Oh boy!
I'm not the host for once. You know what I mean?
So, how much on a scale of 1 to 10, pain and anxiety level? Where were you at as this emotional crux of Sure Thing is ending?
Yeah.
On October 6th, I think was the date.
Final show. Yeah.
And then October 13th, the launch of Fallout Tonight. 1 to 10. Where were you?
You know, that's a good. I mean, 10's all around. And you know, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a weird kind of excitement. You know, I was also a 10 excited for the new show, and the last year thing was very fun as well.
Kudos, by the way. It was very well done. You know, finales can sometimes just suck.
Yeah.
And I loved what you guys did, you know, and I loved how I think every comic, you know, did their set, but then also spent a little bit of time telling the audience why Sure Thing was important to them personally.
It was a beautiful night, and I will, you know, we booked that lineup together, but I will shout out Brendan, who, because we did like just some chat to open. That was the format of that finale was all of his idea. Because he was like, let's just both come out to talk. We don't do our jokes, but we talk about the show, maybe take questions, and that it all turned out great. Yeah. And then he's like, we'll do a 2-part thank you thing, like some in the middle, and then 3 more comics, and then a wrap up thing at the end. And it was such a great. And he like literally made a list. He was like, well, we'll thank all these, and we'll go back and forth. I'm like, this is perfect, dude. Because like, both with that ending and my new thing coming up, I was just in this like crazy place mentally of split focus, you know. Like we'd been doing all these, we did 4 or 5 like practice writers' room nights for the new show, starting in August. So like 3 months before we hit the ground here. And each time it was like a very encouraging, like, oh, we little monologue jokes. These are easy still. And we would kind of respond to the news and think of like sort of sketch ideas and then get to this place where we'd have to actually write it. And I'd be like, let's not do that. We're not really doing the show, but we know we can conceive of it. But even just when Sure Thing was finally over, the first like actual writer's room, I was like, oh, I have my whole brain. Here we go. Yeah. And I will say, I've done this sort of stuff a long time, and I'm not often caught off guard by things that happen, like in a show or on stage. Yeah. And we did there was some very sentimental thank yous, and I said a very sentimental thing about getting to spend my whole 30s with my best friend all the time. That's crazy. Yeah. And I was truly not prepared for the sold out Fallout Theater crowd to stand up and applaud. You know, I'm not.
There was a lot of love in that room. I mean, you brought a lot of joy to a lot of people.
Well, I'm very proud of it. Well, and I think there's also something, and I wonder what Brendan would say about this, but something about we chose to stay here and start the label, and he's going to do a little stand-up in Portland, but it's not like both of us are about the like our solo star power thing. Yeah. And I wonder about other paths I could have taken, and I think I like living in Austin. I'm happy with this life. Yeah. But I think at some point I was like, I've stopped pursuing standing ovations. You know what I mean? Because I like it here, and this is a city where I can't imagine. Maybe if I do another album, that would happen at the end. But it didn't happen in my first one. Like that was one of the best other nights of my career. But you don't expect a standing ovation. How could you? So that was very touching. And then I had to do a whole new thing the very next week. It was. I'm sure I'm going to look back on it as like the craziest decision I've ever made. But
But you're 13 in. I'm so glad that I've gotten, it took me way too long. The kid has swim meets, debate tournaments, there's travel. Yeah. I hated that I couldn't see the first, but since I got to see one, I'm like, I am so smitten with this show. Like, it is really good.
You've been to 2 of them, yeah? Like
two. It feels like more, but maybe that is right.
Doesn't it feel like more than we've done?
Yeah.
That's like it's like we only done 13. We've put so much thought into it. But
yeah. Oh, the number of hours that have gone into those, 13 hours, on the stage.
I hope it shows. It's so hard to judge it against doing stand up for so long.
Yeah.
Because it's just and if you're out there wondering what the format of the show is we're talking about, generally as it's worked out, I'll book 3 10-minute stand-up sets. So it's still half stand-up or a little less depending on the runtime. But I open with a monologue, and we do at least like 25 other minutes of like stuff we made up 2 days before. So some character stuff, some games, some improvised things, trying to get more and more improvisers involved in the Fallout community here, which has been very gratifying so far. But yeah, you just and that's where some coworkers, others were like, "Oh, I really wish I could have been at the first one." I'm like, probably our worst one. Oh. I mean, it was great. They've all been great in their own way, but this really sort of has gained momentum, I think.
Yeah.
In the way we're going about it. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up, I think. Like
now I'm like, okay, every Friday that I'm available, I'm gonna come to the show, and I'm gonna count the audience members. I'm like, come on, we can do this. We can do this. This is the, please reward good things part of me.
Well, and honestly, because that's, we've done 13. I think we broke 40 people a couple of times, and the rest have kind of vacillated between like 12 to 20.
Yeah.
And it's always been like, oh, Fallout's so set up for it to be a great room and it's a great show and these are great crowds. But as just like a host, I want to provide a better experience for, especially the stand-ups. I would say that that week of transitioning from one to the other, because there's all these walls in your heart against like even that standing ovation. Where I'm trying to be like, we're just 2 dudes that did a thing like many other people have done in this town, and how important can that possibly be to people? And then I come the next week for my non-Sure Thing show, and there are like 8 pre-sales for the very first one.
And did any of them think they were going to be at a Sure Thing show, or did they get the memo?
That's where I mean, like, Sure Thing meant a lot to people, and people knew the name. And based on getting the word out about a new thing, I'm like, I was consistently, we did the show for 11 years, and it was well attended the whole time, and I'm like, I can't be allowed to take credit for that. That seems like just lightning or something, and to start a new thing, I'm like, no, I think we were doing something right.
There you go. Good.
I think we, I think there was a reason it was successful, and it was 99% the 2 of us. Yeah,
Good.
So that would be the silver lining of the weeks, especially like the first 3 weeks of Fallout Tonight were like very low, and the nerves were very high, and then it started to just be like a sort of like full room, and I'm like, oh, thank God. That's and we had to sort of pitch through pull past all the major holidays here, and
that's true. You did have to deal with a lot of that.
January is always sort of an uptick, based on the Sure Thing numbers. So we'll see.
Yeah. So tonight you have your very first actual guest that you're going to be interviewing. We'll keep that as a secret.
Well, this will not come out until
a couple of weeks or
after the show.
Oh yeah. So a few weeks ago you had me on as your first ever guest on Fallout Tonight. Are there other firsts that you have kind of envisioned for the show?
There are, yeah. I mean, I think there's been some fun firsts so far, because especially as the show got going, I've done some like just cold reaching out to people that I don't even know, which is I would never do on Sure Thing. But I'm excited. At some point, I want to have our first like non-comedy musical guest.
Ooh.
Because we've had Vanilla Presley and Tiff and Gabe from Egg Party do comedy song and very well received. But I think it's a format where we could just be like, now here's some music, you know, not like death metal or something, but
although,
wow.
yeah, you know.
The biggest issue is switching from the early show, so we can't set up a band or anything. But but so yeah, that'll be a fun first when it happens. There's a couple ideas I have for that. I want to get more interviews after. I have a good friend that wrote a book.
Ooh.
That I just ordered, flush with holiday money. So I'm gonna read it and bring him on, and you know he can do a signing in the lobby after. So. Yeah, just a lot of sort of percolating things like that. But yeah, you'll be all right. Do a little chatting with each stand-up afterwards because it's fun to have. Lisa Friedrich, who's been a producer on the show, remember we were talking at some point over the summer. She's like, you could do like a call people to the couch thing, like Johnny Carson. I'm like, how would I call everybody to the couch? How would I talk to?
That's true. Then,
how would I talk to all three for a couple of minutes, and it's just like part of the show. You don't need to make it even more explicit that you're like approving of some people.
Don't like that person.
It's like we no longer have a headliner, but there's people I want to talk to, and there's people I don't want to talk. But yeah, we were talking this week at the writers' meeting and going over a couple other ideas, and then John was just like, "Let's just interview Valerie." Like we haven't actually just had an actual bring somebody on as an interviewer. And like I was saying, just based on adapting to doing this thing on the fly, there's been a lot of like coming in with this sketch or more elaborate idea and being like, ugh, let's just let people be themselves. So yeah, I'm just going to have you on the show and interview about all this stuff and finally turn the tables after 6 years.
Yeah. Finally.
And if you're listening to this in the future, it went great.
That's right. It did. I did fabulously. And Duncan was a great interviewer.
Well, and that's what's been very interesting for me because I don't do stand-up on my own show anymore. So it didn't occur to me that like, oh boy, what I was really preparing for while doing Sure Thing, or the way I was preparing for this was like the beginning with the announcements, or the few times like something would kind of happen and I would have to address it, and all this sort of madcap stuff. Because if you told me 13 weeks ago I would be this confident in like the just chatting, improvised aspect of everything, I'd be like, all right, that's.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Because, you spend 16 years doing stand-up, you have a safety net no matter what. You know, like what's the next bit?
Yeah.
And now we're just throwing ourselves into the water. Yeah.
Okay, so the burning question in my mind, you talked about music, and I know that you are a self-taught keyboardist and singer. Have I missed the shows where you have brought your keyboard to the stage and sung a tune?
I will tell you that has not yet happened.
Okay.
But on the second show, I did play a song at the end. For a somewhat confused 8 or 9 or 10 people. So I wrote a little song to close the show in a very hammy, sincere way. And that's the only time I have played music on it. So.
Oh, okay.
Although I did a storytelling show here it's like ASCAT, where it's Jess Lynette's show Teenage Dirtbag here at Fallout. I did last Wednesday. Okay. 9 days ago. And it's like you tell stories about high school. So my first story was when I was 15, I tried to karaoke. It was the first time I ever went on stage. It was just like at a random day festival. And I was like, I'm going to go sing Closing Time by Semisonic because that's my jam. And I love that band. And the chorus, I could not hit that. No. And I fucked it up like 16 times. It was very embarrassing. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't go on stage again until I was 21 for stand-up. So I was like, oh, boy, could I play closing time on the guitar to close the show and like finally like get it right. And she was like, of course, you know, and it's very, very fun. The crowd sang along. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So when the next like right idea presents itself, that will inevitably end up on Fallout Tonight. But it's still even like a comedic idea for a song, singing to people. It's very sincere, you know? It's got to be the right.
Yeah.
If that's a burning question, it's still a simmering concept in terms of execution.
So this is Outside Observer. Obviously, I went to a lot of Sure Thing shows.
Sure.
I've gone to a couple of Fallout Tonight. Sure Thing to me was very much about the structure of the two of you alternate your stand-up sets, and then we go bam, 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 you know, stand-up, headliner.
Sure.
Do you feel... Like, I know there's a structure, and you're investing the time with the writers meeting, but do you feel like there's as much structure with Fallout Tonight, or do you feel like it's a lot looser, and that's kind of where you're gaining some of that confidence because you're like, yeah, I'm trusting myself. You've got a team that trusts you, that helps you feel like you trust yourself to be on stage and just do that improvised interview, do the monologues and roll with what's going on in the audience.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of structure, there's more in a certain way. I mean, because that's I've yet to really reach or like have an out of towner on the show or something. But at some point, I need to work up like a boilerplate. Like, hey, I need to know well in advance if you have like an early or late out or whatever, because there's even less flexibility than the Sure Thing of like if you're running late.
Oh yeah.
Or because the stand-ups go at 3 very specific times during a runtime that we've planned out.
Okay.
There is a little bit of, there was a night somebody was still not quite here, and it was literally like, well, we could just play apples doubles first. I got like, but I do make a whole run of show like document for the tech saying this is all specifically going to happen in this order. Because just as a hack for like production elements, I have a Spotify playlist of any like sound cues that are on the show.
Okay.
Which sometimes is a lot. Sometimes it's all intro songs or whatever. So I just tell them like follow it along. They're sort of tied together. So I would really feel for the tech if we had to switch it up at the last minute, but we could do it. Yeah.
Well, okay, then I'm going to turn this into a major compliment to you and what you've accomplished, because you know how they say a mark of a good stand-up is when you feel like they're just having a conversation with you. Like it just feels like it's not a planned thing at all.
Sure, yeah.
Well, the shows that I've seen, it's like, okay, there's, you know, this is happening. I get a stand-up, and then there's an interview, and then we've got the little sketch. But it feels very loose. And it doesn't, this might come off as a backhanded compliment. It doesn't feel planned.
Thank you.
It just all feels very natural, and you roll with what's going on. And I'm like, oh my God, there's actually timestamps of when specific things happen. And I'm like, as an audience member, I had no idea.
Okay. All right.
You and your team have managed to create something that feels very natural and organic, and not, okay, and now we must do this. Okay, 5 minutes have passed, and now we must do this.
That's the beauty of it, yeah. And especially having 3 very dependable 10-minute blocks of stand-up.
Yeah.
And then basically we're just doing that and killing time in between.
Yeah.
So that's, we do a little thing between monologue jokes and the first stand-up.
Yeah.
We always come up with some sort of more conceptual thing, because I'd hate to just be like, here are 8 unproven jokes, and now I've got, you need a little buffer there.
Yeah.
So that's been the formula every week, is we have to think of something to do between the monologue and the first stand-up, and then 2 more things to do in between the other 2, interstitial parts.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's like multiple short things, So yeah, it's almost like a self-dictating structure that's like very loose, and that's a great compliment. That's exactly what we're going for, is this atmosphere of like, folks, it's almost the holidays. We thought we'd talk to an elf. We had Garrett Buss play an elf, right? And what we found the most, when we have like a character bet, again, because as we've been discussing, we don't have cue cards. I don't want to make myself and somebody else memorize a whole thing. Yeah. Brendan will tell you on the third show, he wrote basically the whole thing, and I forgot 80% of what I was supposed to say. Like I even forgot the beats. You know what I mean? Like, not let alone the words, but it had like 2 turns to it, and I was like, oh yeah, that part. So when we have like a character thing, it'll be like, here's how I'm going to bring it up. So the tech knows how to bring it up.
Yeah.
And it'll be improvised within the whole middle of it. And then we'll plan like an ending sort of beat. So with Garrett, it was just telling me about the terrible working conditions at the North Pole. And then I'll be like, hey, have you ever thought about like unionizing? And that's his cue to be like, we don't say that word. And also the text cue to play Sleigh Bells from the Spotify playlist. And he's like, it's Santa, and he runs away. So that's where it's like you bring it up as casually as can be, but then it has like a formal, denouement, like, ha, like it was a sketch kind of, ha,
Yeah.
So we've been conceiving a lot of fun sort of logic to things on Wednesdays, as opposed to sitting there and like writing everything everyone's going to say.
Yeah.
And there's so many talented improvisers and so many stand-ups that, like myself, have like untapped improvisational potential. That just like there's not a lot of formats where you get to use those muscles.
Right.
So
I'll put in my plug that one of my favorites is the Well Girl. We don't have to identify who the Well Girl actually is, but I'm a big fan of the Well Girl.
Comic stuck in a well.
Yeah.
That is on the first. I'll name her. It's Catherine Hutchins.
Brilliant improviser.
She's been on like 8 or 9 shows, truly.
Yeah.
And I'll say it here on record. That's the plan is the first time I get like sick is like she'll be my Joan Rivers, like guest host of the show.
Nice.
But I don't remember in the very first like practice writers meeting, somehow Comic Stuck in a Well came up. And it was like, it was almost like a running thing where I was like, so we could do this kind of show. And she's like, I noticed there's no comic stuck in a well. And now we've done it like 5 or 6 times, and I'm like, bluff called. We have to continually think of well-related humor. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another good example of something that seems very casual. Mm-hmm. And maybe no one noticed but me that I introduced the Comic Stuck in a Well one week with Fountains of Wayne sink to the bottom. So, yeah, a lot of subtext, a lot of mental energy going into this stuff.
Are all of your creative juices flowing into the show? Are there other things that you're dabbling in creatively?
It's all sort of like a show centric thing, or definitely music has become something that I'm just kind of doing at night a lot to sort of unwind and get my mind off of this stuff half the time.
Yeah.
So I've been writing a lot of songs lately that are just straight up regular music and they're not going to end up on the show. So that's happening. But the rest of my brain is like, how do we, what about this? Or, I do have one kind of idea, and I shouldn't spoil it on here because if I don't do it, I'll be like, why'd you say it on a podcast? But I'll tell you off mic, but like a merchandise idea that I think could really be something and be part of the show. But that's TBD. We'll have to see.
Right.
But that's what I mean. It's like, not only are they flowing, mostly the show is like, it just causes this like exponential effect because I keep saying stand-up is kind of doing it so long with such a, we made the label, we did all this other stuff, but like in terms of on stage performer energy, you just tell jokes. Yeah. You're just talking. And it's like that thing where you stand in the doorway with your arms against the sides. And when you step forward, your arms go, all on their own. So yeah, the output for 13 weeks is astounding when I sit back and look at it.
Are you recording video on the shows at all?
Here and there.
Yeah.
That's like sort of next on the list to make that look professional. Because I've got an old phone I've been setting up here and there to get some monologue jokes, but so because those are by nature disposable, I'll put them on TikTok and the other socials. But it's almost been nice to just kind of not worry about taping or what to do with it in the early stages.
Right. I mean, you're in your baby stages. Learn to walk.
Yeah.
Get the hang of that.
But
then you can tackle.
That has crossed our minds to when that gets set up to like be achievable. And honestly, the thing I'm finding the most is that I have a finite amount of time. I'll shout out Mason Pitlock, who was also helped in a producer role, and he was the artistic director that approved the pitch in the first place.
Yeah.
I laid it all out where I'm like, because I'll resume doing stuff on TikTok on a semi-regular basis, podcast after the show, and it all kind of feeds into itself. And he's like, this is a lot of work, dude. And I was so gung-ho, of course. But in practice, I need both good cameras and audio stuff and a person to do all that back-end work for me. Yeah. So we'll sort that out. But yeah, we are very excited, I think. I'm very excited. Yeah. In the long-term sense of like, not only is this really fun to do, and I think sustainable the way we're doing it and fun for the crowds, but a unique opportunity to like, create unique content every week that is well thought out and entertaining. Like, right. I almost hate saying the word content because it has all this weight, but like, there's a lot of potential in that. Yeah. Both for the show and for the theater, but for everybody, I want to do this show. It would be an insane dream to do this for 11 years. And then we have not only, that's what I want. Okay. Because Sure Thing was very gratifying and I love you, Val. I love talking about it. But maybe my least favorite recurring thing in the few interviews we did about the end of it is who are all the famous comics that did the show. And it's gratifying they did it. I love the list. I love all of them. It was neat for me, but I don't give, that's the thing I give the least shit about. I want to do Fallout Tonight for 11 years, and it's half the cast of SNL got their start on my show. Oh. You know what I mean? I want to bring these people to the world, not be like Gerard Carmichael came to me one time. Like, but so that is exciting because it's like I want people to see how talented this community is in a way that and also how talented this community already was before some arbitrary point in the time when other elements arrived. And that's as specific as I'll get.
I'll say number 2 on the top 10 comedy stories of 2023 as written by moi in the Austin Chronicle.
Oh yeah, it was on your list there.
It was on my list. I couldn't ignore it. I had to say it. And it's definitely had an impact. But, and actually, before COVID, I could tell you, there's no other show like your show. Now there's 500 million thousand shows happening in Austin. I can't tell you that there isn't a similar show, but I've got a pretty good beat on the scene. I don't think there is.
Well, I felt a much more dead certainty about Fallout Tonight being a show only I would do. Because there's a couple other there's at least one other sort of like newsy format, but that's another sort of surprising thing about the show is other than the monologue, fuck news. No one cares about the news. We'll have the occasional thing that sort of is Christmas or whatever, but like we're not doing like politics in-depth stuff. I'll have one joke in the monologue maybe about political headlines, but just the more like silliness and the more character stuff, like Yeah, it is. It is so much less Daily Show or Weekend Update-esque than I would have predicted.
Yeah.
In a very fun way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it's making you happy. That's the big thing. Is, you being happy with it and having fun and feeling like, you've got that expressive freedom to, and again, going back to just like Sure Thing, you had a great partner. You have a great partner. You've got great partners that make it all work.
Yeah. I couldn't do it without these two fellas. Yeah. Especially, because like Lisa and Mason have been in a producer role. Probably once a month they'll be able to make the writers' meeting and pop on the show or whatever. But a lot of it was like I kind of called it like I spent the whole summer doing like my own Ocean's 11.
What?
Of just like, because like John I see all the time, but I actually probably haven't talked to Adam in like a year, maybe more since the pandemic, how it can be. So I was just like, oh, hey man, you want to hang out? And then like mid hangout, just be like, Brendan's moving, and just, I forgot how I get into it. But, I went to Adam, or I started having really productive conversations with Lisa and ended up recruiting Mason to be part of it during the pitch meeting for it. And, like like a McRae, we've only ended up having once, but, sorry. I was just like, you ever think of like character stuff that doesn't really fit instead? So just, that thing where you just approach people and bring them back out of the woodwork. Yeah. But yeah, Adam and John specifically, not just to help me put it together, but be here even on nights when they're not on stage. And we do the podcast after, and which really helps us think about it. It's just this whole new stage, Yeah. I'm very excited.
Awesome. I'm very excited for you. Okay. I have been holding on to my last little round of questions.
Okay.
This goes back to our very first episode together where we talked about the infamous Hercule Poirot.
Sure, yeah.
Have you watched any good Poirot lately?
Lately, I mean, I've seen a couple of these movies, I guess. Yeah. Which are really... I'm glad those are at least getting it out there so I can make like a Poirot reference. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right. I they were kind of silly fun, both the two. I didn't see the Haunting in Venice one yet.
I did see that one.
But I saw Death on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express, of course.
Kenneth Branagh is growing on me as Poirot.
Well, I just mean, like, I don't know if they're the best thing in the world, but there's not a ton of, like, stuff like that at the movies anymore, where it's just, like, a mid-budget mystery with a bunch of famous, but, like, make more of this sort of thing. I don't know.
Which is all basically the original story of Agatha Christie, so it's just basically a reboot every time that you make it.
But I've seen 2 out of the 3 of those. I'm very far behind on if anyone's played them in the last decade on PBS or what have you.
I can't find my favorite, of course, is the David Suchet, Suchet, whatever, however you pronounce his name, his series, and you can't find it on streaming unless you pay. I'm not willing to pay for him.
You don't want the PBS app?
No, I don't want to pay. I'm already paying so much.
I cancel all my streaming services.
Oh wow, that's bold.
I reverse cord cut or whatever. Is it bold? Now if I really want to I'll just do a month of Netflix and then I'm done.
Yeah.
And I save $80 a month. It's incredible.
I mean, we're really we're just going back to the days of cable because now they're putting ads. All of them that were ad free. They're either going to charge you to not do ads or they're just going to force them down your throat. Yeah. So it's like, okay, we're back to cable and, basic cable television format now. So it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, or like every time I order something on Amazon, they'll be like, do you want Prime for a month for free? I'm like, sure. Yeah, let's see what you got. I'll save money on shipping for a month and then cancel it again. So yeah, and somebody at work today, because I mentioned like reading a book, they were like, oh, have you finished that yet? I'm like, God, no. I've been... I realized and we'll see about work-life balance in the show and stuff. Yeah. But this is a lot of what I do.
I bet. Yeah.
I was up late last night photoshopping Steamboat Willie into some stuff for a bit that's not going to be very long because it's very labor intensive. It turns out to Photoshop.
Oh yeah.
But I'm not. I have to do the bit.
You gotta commit.
We got a Steamboat Willie movie thing after the monologue today. So
okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. All right, let's get out of here. Do you want to revisit your one word for the future?
I bet I stand by it. Whatever it was.
Did I? Limitless.
Yep. There we go.
All right, that was easy.
And that okay. So, but like that, it's been very hard when people are like, "How is the show going?" Because I don't know how to describe how thrilling and exciting it has been for me in a way that makes that it either sounds like I'm very like, you're always cautious against sounding egotistical because it's not even super well attended yet or anything, but it's so freeing mentally in this way that I didn't feel blocked necessarily. Yeah. It feels like doing drugs. It is. Like I could feel it in real time. I think the fourth week when we had like a crowd of 40 people after 3 weeks of like, and I just, I was bouncing all around the room. It's crazy how well it's going. Yeah. From in my own perception. Yeah. So the limitless. I feel like I'm in the limitless pill. Is why I went on this tangent. But yeah, I'll stand by limitless.
Anything else that you want to talk about, tell people about before we wrap up?
Coming up in the future, well, this is all in the works in terms of Sure Thing Records. Mm-hmm. And we've been talking about it for what feels like 5 or 6 years now, but we might make our first foray into video. Ooh. In the upcoming year, which is to say record a special.
Wow.
Where you can also see the person telling jokes.
What?
Really?
That's a revolutionary concept.
Our thing is we like to arrive at a format decades after it's already been pioneered. So, comedy albums, probably that's like a 70s thing. And now we're 10 years later when HBO started having like specials that were up. So here we are. That's in the works. Mac Blake's full length at some point in 2024. Fallout Tonight wise, this is up in the air. It's every Friday night at Fallout Theater. Yeah. 9:30. Half stand up, half variety. The initial thinking when pitching the show, I was like, oh, this is so much work. Here's what we do, maybe. You take the summer off, 2-3 months or something. It's just a straight up showcase for a few months. Then we come back with season 2. Ooh. We also planned initially to maybe like do that for Black Friday or these 2 that were around the holidays. And then when these holiday shows were coming up, we're like, no, let's fucking do the show, dude.
Nice.
So it is a lot of work, but it's almost, especially for these last holiday ones, that's almost easier work than trying to get the word out that it's just a showcase this week. Yeah. So I'm really, and I keep saying to John, I'm like, I guess we'll find out when it gets closer, but at the end of like May or whenever, I'm like, maybe we just keep doing the show. I'll take a break when I need to, but just get like guest hosts and certainly, there's a week or 2 that Adam or John couldn't be at I only want as much of everyone as they have to offer. Mm-hmm. But I think we could maybe do 52 shows this new year, the first one of which is moments from now. Yeah. So come to Fallout Theater every Friday night. Also, if you like podcasts, we do one after the show called Signing Off, which I don't know. People do listen, but I'm not sure what they get out of it. I feel like it's mostly for us, as most podcasts are.
Yeah.
But we do. There's a lot of jokes that end up on the writer's room floor, or other ones that I'm like. Last week for the show, we made a 2024 bingo card as like a gag, and it was such a quick bit to show people. I was like, let's just go down all 25 jokes we wrote for this on the podcast, because like. What if any of this stuff actually happens this year?
Yeah. Oh, that's true. You need to
very silly predictions, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, the show generates a lot of stuff that ends up on the podcast or on social media or whatever. So just come to the show, follow us on all channels. It's mostly what I'll be up to. Yeah.
Very good. All right, that is a wrap on Comedy Wham presents Duncan Carson. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6. Number 6. Duncan, tell us where we can find you on social media, and do that plug again.
I'm at a Duncan Carson on Instagram. I'd say it's probably the new default place, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't like the other ones.
Yeah.
You can also follow Fallout_tonight on Instagram, or just Fallout Tonight on TikTok. Facebook, don't go there. I don't use that. That's I need to get better about all this stuff. But yeah, follow me on Instagram. That's the chief place. Watch them stories.
Yeah, very good. The promo game is good.
Thank you.
Fallout Tonight.
That's my other big pivot. Is I was tired of making a new flyer every week. So now I make essentially trading cards.
Yeah.
Of everyone on the show each week.
Yeah.
And it's not only faster, but more convenient. Tonight, Tori Poole has allergies. So she was like, I can't do it. I was like, Jason Rodriguez, are you available? Yes.
Nice.
And I already had a little image for him and all. So I was like, hey, look who hopped on the show. Look how professional this enterprise is. Got a whole graphic department at standby.
The things you learn for your art form. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning about how Duncan got to be the comedic genius you heard today, just as much as I have. This has been Comedy Wham presents Duncan Carson.
I'm not endorsing comedic genius. I'll take it, but know that it was not my idea.
I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.